It is about you. You are the selling point, and the landscape is changing. So be your authentic self because no one wants to go to work being miserable all day. Look at your own resume, look at your own LinkedIn, and look at your impact and what you have provided for that other company. And if you write things in that context, you're going to talk to the next employer.
In my opinion, it's about giving the customer what they really want and just blowing their mind once they get it. And that's what I really love to see, honestly.
Get people to do more of home cooking, home cooked meals, healthy meals, so we can all live long and happy.
I'm very proud to be a mom because not for nothing, women are amazing.
Oh my God, the sacrifice, and how we make it look so easy.
I was just telling Joanne before we got on the call, I said, I had to run from my daughter's school. They had an Easter egg hunt. I said, all right, Mom, I gotta go to work. But, you know, just as moms, we make it happen, you know, supernatural abilities. We are the example for them, you know, and I know that with them being a better version of us.
You have to try. You never know how creative you are until you try. Because I didn't think I was creative. I found my creative side during a horrible time in my life.
In 2009, Athenia dreamed bold, bringing freedom vibes, our stories retold. In the heart of In 2009, Athenia dreamed bold, bringing freedom vibes, our stories retold. In the heart of
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Thursday. We are super excited to have you joining us in this amazing time. It is what? We're in August. Everyone is getting ready to go back to school, at least up in New York. We down here in Georgia, we've already started going back. So we're really excited. My name is Athenia Rodney. I'm CEO and founder of Juneteenth NYC. And this is Juneteenth NYC's Lunch and Learn. So today we have a special guest who is joining us, and we'll be talking about a couple of things. Let me get this bio up and going so that we can learn a little bit more about Mr. Chad Chambers. So Mr. Chad Chambers actually was a vendor with us with Juneteenth on this past year. So we are excited when anyone decides that they want to change their designation and kind of work more with us in different spaces. So we are excited for that. He was talking about finance during that, and we've had a couple of conversations. And so we wanted to bring him on because we know that this is something that is a major challenge for us, especially in our community, right? And one of the things that with Juneteenth that we've really been focusing on in how to build legacy, not just around our 9-to-5 jobs, but what are other ways, other streams, other avenues to be able to build legacy. And funny enough, I was just reading this book about, what is it called? The Millionaire Man. And what it talked about was about frugality and how frugality is where you see most millionaires. They don't have high-priced cars. They don't live in these exuberant neighborhoods. They are very frugal in their spending. They are couponers, like all of these things. And I'm like, really? Like millionaires? And that's the reason why they get to keep their millions, because they're not just spending money however they want to. And so I am going to share a little bit and bring on Mr. Chad Chambers He is committed and community-driven financial planner with New York Life, whose mission is simple yet powerful to help individuals, families, and business owners achieve financial independence and security. And as I was sharing, that's really the goal of a lot of what we're doing. Chad isn't here to sell dreams, and I appreciate that. And in conversations that I've had with him, he is definitely not that person. He is like, I really want to tell y'all the real deal. And hopefully, he'll share a little bit about his story. He's here to build foundations with a client centered approach and years of experience. He works closely with people at every stage of life, from those just beginning their financial journey to those preparing for retirement and legacy planning. So, his framework around RISE, which is reach, inspire, secure, and empower, isn't just a motto that he abides by. It's a movement. And I'm all about the movements, y'all. Y'all know that. Juneteenth NYC itself is a movement. It's about teaching toward your goals and inspiring confidence through clarity, securing your finances with intention, meaning that you're putting plans in place to make sure that it happens, and empowering you to create a future of freedom, not just for yourself, but for generations to come. So, if we can bring Mr. Chad Chambers on and welcome him. Hello, how you doing, Chad?
How you doing? How you doing, everyone? How's everybody doing? How you doing?
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you for joining us. To start us off, can you tell us about what inspired you to become a financial planner?
Um, Financial professional. I like to say that's the professional. Well, one thing that started me to become a financial professional was I seen the need out there in the community. A lot of people don't do the proper planning and they don't know the different steps that it takes to do the planning. They think finances and they think money when there's a whole lot of things that can affect that, whether that's a loss of income, a loss of health, which is a main big thing in our community, and also ultimately the loss of life, right? I got into remaining this business that I wanted to reach my people who want to have those conversations. Me growing up, coming from a Caribbean background, from immigrants as well, they didn't necessarily do the right planning, or they didn't know, or they were scared, or they were misinformed by someone, or they would have made the correct steps if their best friend would have made that, or if their uncle told them, "Oh, do this and do that," and not necessarily knowing that that's what's set up for them and what's not set up for them. So that's why I got into this business to really educate people so they can learn different vehicles that they can put their assets, their money in that they're pulling in, but also how can we start and grow for the future as well.
Hmm. So, what Caribbean are you from?
I'm Jamaican, so I'm actually first American born out of all my family, really. Yes, first American born out of all my family, first generation. So if you know that pressure from most people, first generation, there's a lot of curses and mindsets that has to be broken, right? A
Absolutely.
lot of things, in community and in family that aren't necessarily talked about that should be talked about. Everyone is just like the hush hush around the subject when until it's too late, right? When someone either passes away or someone is sick, right? And then all these things just start popping up, and it's just like how, who, what, when, here. And at the end of the day, either some money is going to be due, somebody's going to need help, or somebody's going to get neglected. So how can we create a plan so that doesn't happen?
Yeah. So I mean, just talking about intentionality and what you shared about creating a plan, and even, and I don't know if you're comfortable sharing your story. Can you share a little? Are you comfortable sharing a little bit
Right, yeah,
about
very much
the why?
comfortable. I know
Um,
when we first started, I wasn't so comfortable, but it's become a driving point for me for me to do more for my clients and for the people that I sit with in my community. So my mom, unfortunately, she was hit by a drunk driver on her way to work. Back in 2013, she had messed up disc in her back, broken arm, broken knee, fluid in her knee, uh, fractured neck. She had a lot going on. Her car was total, and she went back to work prematurely. She went back to school. She did all this, and she ended up having a mental breakdown, right, from the injuries from her car accident. She didn't go to the doctor properly because she was scared. And with that being said, she got really, really sick. So now she's in a full 24-hour care situation. She's nonverbal. She suffers from epileptic seizures. She's right now, she's actually struggling to eat now. She's basically in a dementia body. And I had to, come out of school to come back into house to, help my dad and help, be in the house, right?
Mhm.
COVID had happened. There was a lot going on. I didn't necessarily know how sick my mom was until I got back into the house where she didn't know who I was. I walked in trying to have a conversation with her and she didn't, it was talking to a blank wall. And she was a little bit verbal at the time. And over the years, she's got worse and worse. But most importantly, she didn't have a medical proxy. She didn't have a power of attorney. She didn't have a will. She had insurance and all these things with 1199, but again, it was tied up to work. She ended up getting terminated from work and she lost all her benefits. So it was just me, my dad, and my little brother. We had a few family support, not as much because, it's a tough situation. She was the strongest one in the family. She took care of everyone that needed help. And to see her like that wasn't okay for a lot of people. But I say that to say is that my dad had to fight the state for 2 years to get the will medical proxy. We literally had to roll her into the building. It was like this woman cannot make decisions on her own. And at the end of the day, those 2 years, she needed the care. She needed the help, right? And she suffered from that. Those 2 years could have saved her from a situation that she is in now, right? So I say that to say that everyone should have a plan, right? To at least talk about it, right? Or be aware, let your family be aware of what's in place. These are important things because she was very young when this happened. She actually just turned 59 this year. And as you know, you can't touch your IRAs and your stuff that you worked all these years for without penalty until you're 59 and a half. So we're still waiting. And this has been going on for the last decade almost. So I like to say, no matter how young, how old, where you are in life, how long you've been working, what you have saved, I like to say, how can I protect you from, loss of health, loss of income, loss of life, right? Because these can affect you from gaining wealth.
Wow, and I'm so sorry. Uh-oh, I think we got feedback. Um, we may have to mute whenever it's talking either side. Hold on. So thank you for sharing that, Chad. And this story, every time you shared it, has like hit harder and harder, and even more so for me because this past weekend we've gone through 4 deaths in my family. So we are in the process as a family with planning 4 funerals, and so I know that that becomes contentious points. Thankfully, my family, we try to be very caring and loving and open to each other. And that is not the space. Everybody has their role. But like you shared, there are families that are not in that space and are not ready or not prepared. And I remember when my grandmother passed, she had a NDR, and my grandmother had it laid out. She planned her entire funeral down to who she wanted to speak, who was going to do what poems, what songs was going to be sung, what clothes she wore, what underwear, what shoes, everything. Like the color of her hearse, like everything. She was like, I want a
You
white
had it
hearse. I
planned.
don't want a black hearse. Like she
You
had
had it planned.
everything planned. And I was like, to me, she's like the perfectionist in my world. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like that's so overkill, but it is necessary. It is not overkill. It
Yes.
is actually necessary because it made her funeral the most peaceful, the most transformative funeral. Like it was the best funeral that I've ever, and I had to plan the whole thing. It was the
It allows you
best,
to grieve. It allows you to
right?
generally
It allowed
grieve without having a
exactly,
financial burden in the back of the head.
exactly, exactly. And just 10 years earlier than that, my grandfather's funeral was definitely not the same. It was a lot of like trying to figure things out, trying to figure out like he had house property, he had different types of what do you call it when the house is tied up to the bank because of
Hmm.
because of his age. So they
Hmm.
were like, "Oh, you can pay the amount that he owed, or we can sell a house." And we're like,
Sell
"This
the
house
house.
in the house, the family for like years." So I say that all to say, financial independence is is one part of the story, but what I'm also hearing from you is the other part of the story is also about preparation. So, what are some of the things that you can say would be, I guess, necessary to help people with planning or preparing for end of life care? In addition to the financial component, like or should I say, especially with dealing with the financial component, because that's the main part.
So I like to say the first thing you need to know, what do you have, right? That's the first thing. A lot of times people don't know what they have, and meaning not saying that they don't have anything. There's most cases they don't have anything, but they don't know exactly what they have. I've come in, the common thing that I come into contact with, people are saying, "Oh, I have insurance," or "I have all this stuff set up," right? And a lot of times they don't know, oh, it's just through work, or it's covered part of your income. It's not going to last your whole entire life. So people need to know exactly what they have, what assets do they have, but most importantly, what debts do they have? Because these are all the things that rear its ugly head when either we're sick or when you pass away, right? And for example, your grandfather had the houses and everything, right? Great assets to have, but how is it being transferred, which is the most important part. So a lot of times people don't know what they have and what dangers are down the tracks, right? Everything may seem good when you're alive, everything may seem great, but like you said, that mortgage had to get paid, right? These things had to get done, and who's going to do it? He's not here. It's going to fall on to the heirs. So instead of them grieving, right, now they got to figure it out and then move forward. So I always say the first one and foremost in planning is to know what you have. Secondly, what are you trying to achieve? Right, like you said, that I'm so glad that you had such good dynamics of stories. Like your grandmother had everything planned down to who was going to sing the songs, right? People, you can go that extent. You don't necessarily have to go that extent, but it's always know that that's how far you can go, right? What do you have? What do you have set up? Okay, what do you want to achieve? Right? Where do you want to be if something happens to you in year 35 and you're healthy, right? Who's going to be in charge of managing your money? Who's going to be in charge of managing your health, right? Also, plan for the long term. I like to say, figure out your goals. The goals are like the letter of the alphabet. They range from A through Z, right? And my job is to sit down with you to figure out what's your alphabetical order, because your goals are at the top of the list is very different from the goals at the end of the list, but eventually everything shifts. I like to say your XYZ one day will be your ABC. Now, what time frame is that? Who knows? Because things can happen, right? Something that you had planned all the way at 20 years from now can be the main focus. For instance, like my mom, right? She thought she wasn't gonna get hit by that drunk driver that day. She probably had, oh, I'm gonna work the next 20 years. She was 41 at the time. I'm gonna work the next 20 years, 30 years, possibly retire. I've already been working at this one place for 15 years. I'm set, I'm good, I'm established, my pension is set, all these things, right? And then just like that, right, it can be taken away from you, unfortunately, right? And I like to say, you don't know what's down the road. We can't predict the future. I don't have a glass ball to see, but let's have a plan so we can know what areas you can protect from, right? Just like a house built on poor foundation doesn't matter how pretty it is. Right? It can have 10 bathrooms, marble from head to toe. If it's built on a poor foundation, it takes that one earthquake, that one hurricane, that fire to either devalue or take out the house in its entirety, right? Your finances is just like the same. What is your protection, right? Solitude. Before you can start accumulating, what is your protection solitude? Whether that's, income, disability, life insurance is another thing, a vehicle that we can use, right? Also, long-term care, right? What if you're not in a situation you can't take care of your health? Right? How is that going to allocate from? And at the end of the day, all this is going to cost money. So where is it coming from? So I like to say, know where you want to be, what can happen, and when it can happen. At least have a plan. Not saying you got to throw all your eggs in one basket, but at least take a peek at it, because you never know when it's going to be the main priority or your top of your goals. So I like to say, let's figure out your goals, your alphabets, let's put them in alphabetical order, and then we start a plan. We figure out a plan, and then I sit down with you. I review with you multiple times throughout the year, because everything changes. Needs changes for the good and for the bad. So how can I help you grow?
So thank you for sharing that, and this was very helpful. I know you also, as in my introduction of you, there was talk about this framework that you've created, the RISE
Yes.
framework.
Yes.
Can
So
you
I
talk
didn't. I'm not going to
about?
take full credit for that. That's
Oh
something
yeah.
that New York Life has created, the company that I own my practice with. But it's an outreach program to mainly targeted towards African Americans.
Hmm.
And they're after it's the poll that we have, some of the highest buying power in the United States. We're actually 47 million strong in as a population, and we have about 1.8 trillion dollars of buying power in the United States just from last year. Right, it's
Hmm.
projected to be 2.6. I believe I could be off with the numbers, and 20 by the end of 2026, meaning African Americans are the richest we've ever been since, the end of slavery, since the end of um inception, right? In terms of how much money we actually have. Now,
Hmm.
a lot of that money is tied up into the top percent. So how can we funnel that back into generational wealth, right? Creating for the next generation as well. But also taking the focus on how what you're living today. How can you, I like to say, eat your cake and save some too, right? Because we're all a little bit selfish at the end of the day. Just a little bit, right? But how can take care of what you need to take care of, but also focus on the future as well? So we
Hmm.
have that 1.8 trillion buying power, but the dollars is going out faster than they're coming in.
Right.
All right. So how can I help you reallocate some of that money that's you're pulling in into different tools that's going to give you, whether that's tax-free money, right? Guaranteed money, right? Different growth. If you're looking for something in the market, right? How can we help you with that? Something variable, right? These are all the things that we can put our money to, but we're allocating it to new cars and expensive cars and $1,000 pairs of shoes, right? And it's affecting the younger people because now you see the younger people walking around with these $1,000 pairs of shoes, and they're corrupting their mindsets now. So it all starts from the top, and how can we work it down to the beginning, to the end, right? We have to touch the ones, the youth. They're our future, right? That's the only way we can really make change, impacting the youth. But the conversation starts with you in the house, right? That kid has to grow up hearing these conversations, these financial conversations being had in the house, or else it's just gonna go over the head, right? Or when they get to your age, right, their literacy is out the window. It doesn't matter. They can have $1 million. So you can see they can win $1 million. You hear these stories all the time. People who win the lottery and broke in 3 years. You hear with athletes, right? They got all these $10 million contracts, and then 10 years down the line, right, they're broke doing fraud, doing all these different types of things, mainly because they didn't have the financial literacy. So you can have all these amounts of money, but how can you grow your financial literacy as well? So Rise is really big on that. And how can we, reach, impact, secure, and empower, right, our community? When we have the funds, we have the knowledge, we have the drive, right? Let's do it on our own. We've done it before in the past, and they burned down our cities, they burned down they told us we couldn't do it. We had the Tulsa
Absolutely.
Oklahoma, we had these prominent black cities that did the same things that we're doing now, but they didn't have the spending power that we have. They didn't have, it might not seem like it, but they didn't have the freedom that we do now, right? In terms, and they did it back then. So why can't we do it now?
Wow. That is. Let me just reach you. Okay, so we can get the feedback. I was just saying that I love the framework. I love that idea of the being able to pour back in able to how to pour back and how that will then propel us forward. And looking at some of the trajectories, yeah, we have been in spaces where we have been we've built cities, we've built communities, and they have been burnt, they have been flooded, they have been anything you can think of that's been devastating. And we are going in a space where that could be very likely again, where communities are going to be redistricted, realigned, redlining, segregation, like all of those things are on a rise and coming back into space as we are um, as we are making America great again. And I'm like, well, America was great off the backs of Black people, but yet you don't want to give us the recognition for that. And want to tear down our stories. So that's where Juneteenth NYC steps in. So I think that partnering with you and understanding a little bit more and just being able to have you on the board, I'm excited about what that looks like moving forward as well. Because our young people this year is our area of investment. How we are going to be partnering with some schools and how we're going to be adopting high schools. And we're hoping to be able to share some of this information and bring these tools to them so that they can pay it forward, so that they can go home and teach their families and come away with these better concepts and ideas about financial wealth and generational wealth and what that looks like. I know you talked about your family being from Jamaica. My family, I have Trinidad, I have Venezuela, I have the dirty South, I have American Indian, you name it. I think I'm a hodgepodge of it all, right? Of all of the different things. And one of the things that you talked about is like these misconceptions. What are some financial misconceptions, and what are some of the most realistic ways that we can begin to fight against them?
I actually love that question. So there's a few things that, especially in the African American community, that are just misconstrued completely. Just after me coming into the business and finding out what the reality of that is, it's like wow. So the first thing that I really want to touch on is the church, right? A lot of African Americans feel say, "Oh, the church is going to handle it," right? You know, whenever I'm gone, I need problems, I'm going to go to the church, right? When I pass away, if I don't have the funds, the church is going to handle it. Which most cases it does happen, but that's putting a burden on the church system a lot. I've talked to a lot of pastors. I work with a lot of pastors and preachers, and they told us literally from their words from their mouth, "I can't bury another person." And with that being said, it's just how can we change that, right? How can we get that knowledge back into the church where we can rise the church itself, but also create a pool for the church as well so that those who really can't afford or who can't get certain tools and projects done, that they can go to the church. The funds is there, is reallocated because of the ones who came before. How can we set, you know, do now to benefit later? We might not reap the benefits of it, but that's the part of growth, right? The person who plants the apple tree may not see the fruit that the apple tree bears, right? And that's another thing where I want to come in with the church is that don't always depend on the church. You know, I God is going to take care of things, but God believes in action as well, right? He's not just going to do things for you just because, right? How actionable are you on things, right? I also believe in your faith, pray, but also take action on these prayers that you're praying for, right? Just don't put it in the air and just cross your fingers and hope that God will take care of it when there are actionable steps that you can take in combination. I always say this, I like to say I don't believe in luck. I believe in when preparation meets opportunity, right?
Yeah, this is faith without works is dead. So
Right? Exactly. But it's putting a burden on the churches. A lot of churches literally tell me, pastors have told me, I can't bury another person. It's going to put the church in a hole. Right? How can we create a waterfall system for the church? Right? Being charitable for the church as well, creating that generational wealth for the church so it can feed others who can't afford that as well. Um, that was my first area because I know that's a real big thing. A lot of from my experience in this business, a lot of people say, "Oh, I depend on the church. The church will handle my burial." That's cool, but yes, what if I told you you can help the church help you with your burial, right? Without putting the church to buy it. If you really care about your church and your tidings and everything, you can be the ultimate tither, I like to say, with creating that stream for that church as well. The second one is my kids are gonna take care of it, right? I took care of them, I raised them. So when I'm older and I can't take care of myself, right? Or if I need them to handle stuff, they got it, right? Which is just terrible mindset, honestly. Speaking from a young person, right? I like to say, if you don't know the plan, you are the plan, which is bad. What plans do your parents have? So my young people, I encourage you to go speak to your parents. It's an uncomfortable conversation, but you say, Mom and Dad, it's gonna affect me way more than it's gonna affect you, right? Because I'm like, from my experience, right? I had to turn back to go from school, right? Seeing my mom the way how she was my best friend. Seeing the way how she is, that is a mental burden, right? But to know that if she would have did the right planning, the finances and everything would have been straight, everything good. So when that time comes, that's another thing that's going to show its ugly head, right? So I encourage my young people to talk to your parents. Have the conversations. Like, hey, mom, did you know you can do, invest in a life insurance policy? Young kids, you can buy life insurance for your parents, and you will be the owner, right? Just to make sure that something, whenever happens, you're safe and protecting yourself, right? I like to say also, like, don't always depend on the younger kids because some parents may outlive their kids. You hear multiple times stories, um, parents, child living together, the child gets sick. Now the parent is taking care of the child when they were thinking they were going to take care of them. Now their health is deteriorating. They're taking care of a sick child. That child passes away. Now they're hopeless. They're struggling around, and those are clients I run into. What can I do? Right? There's 50, 60 years old, 70 years old. Hey, what can I do? I need something. Right? Don't wait till it's too late, which is one thing I like to tell my clients. Don't wait till it's too late. Another thing is, I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question one more time? I started rambling off.
No, you were doing good, and we was just talking about the different. And to your point, what you were just sharing, my like I said, I just had four deaths this weekend, and one, my aunt, she's burying her daughter and her sister. So she is outliving those two individuals, And so to your point about, you never know if your child will go before you. So leaving them to be the person to build out the wealth will take. So the question was around what are some realistic ways to begin building out? And you share some stuff that I'm like, wow, I didn't even know. I mean, I never thought to go to my church to ask them to pay for a funeral or anything like that. So that's the first time I'm actually hearing about that, which I'm surprised. I'm like, um, I know people would still need to pay the church, and usually there was some form of, but I guess there's a part of that the church might take on for the parishioner or something like that. So that's definitely very interesting to understand and to know. And like, yeah, we did have a speaker who came on a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking about um, investments for churches because they are the pillar of our communities, and how can we do more so that the churches are a little bit more substantiated financially. So to your point, it's definitely a thing where people are going to their churches and the churches are being bled dry because the parishioners are not able to contribute financially the way they should with their 10%, their first fruit, right? And then if they are dying or having children who are dying younger than them and they're not prepared with any kind of financial support, then they're looking for support from the church and the church family. So thank you for sharing that. I'm going to switch gears a little bit, so just going off of what you were sharing. Um, what's your advice for business owners? Because we're talking about churches, and technically, and a lot of people don't like to say, but church is a business, right? So, what is your advice for business owners who want to plan for both business growth and personal financial security?
Yeah, so I love working with business owners because I always say they're the most impactful people in our communities, especially the small businesses, right? But they're also the last to do the planning for themselves, right? Especially if they have employees. They will plan for their employees, they will have stuff in place for insurances and all these things for their employees, and then forget about themselves because they're invested into their business, right? Or they think that their business is gonna be their retirement, right? and that's banking on having a successful business. So one way I educate my business owners is how can I help you get more dollars out the tax system, right? Social Security is not necessarily going to be a high thing because most business owners aren't reporting all their earnings, so they're going to miss out on that maximum Social Security benefits, right? Because they don't want to pay taxes now. They're reporting less than what they were actually making, but they don't know further down the line that train if Social Security is still here. Hopefully, it's still here when it's time for most of these business owners are trying to collect, but they're stopping their growth. They can't create certain type of IRA funds for themselves. They are the ones that's supplying it. So how can create funds for yourself, guaranteed income, pension like pay almost, that's going to give you guaranteed income for as long as you live, because you don't intend to be a business owner forever, right? Eventually, at that point, that business is going to be sold, and that's banking on it's a successful business. You're going to be sold, passed down, right? In other cases, people close down shop. They say, hey, I have my business. It's been going on for this years. Nobody in my family wants to take it. I can't sell it. Let's close down shop, which is a common thing that was happening in America right now. A lot of businesses, a lot of business owners are looking to get out the business. They've been working for 20, 35 years, and now they have no one to pass it down to or no one to buy. So ultimately, they're just stuck with a business, and they're 70 years old now. Their business is running down to the ground, right? And now they're putting more money, dumping in more money in their retirement, or quote unquote retirement, because business owners technically are retired. I like to say your retirement is when you can pay yourself, right? How much are you going to pay yourself? So now they thinking they have this lavish retirement set up ahead, where now they're paying business taxes, they're paying property taxes, especially if it's a brick and mortar, right? They're still paying employee payrolls, they're paying all these different taxes, all these different things that show up in their head. They're 65, 70 years old, or they've been working at this business for 30 years, and they just want to hang it up. So how can we have a succession plan, right? If there's multiple business owners, right, or one or two or more business owners, right, that we're all not going to live forever or be in business together forever. What if one of the business owners passes away, right? Now you have to deal with that family because he's part business owner, right? What type of buy sell agreement do you guys have, right? What is the evaluation of your company, right? In terms of protecting it with a life insurance policy. Also, key employees for my business owners, right? Who's the most important business owner? Who's the most important to your business outside of you, right? You can get a key person insurance on that person to ensure that, God forbid, if something were to happen to them, whether they leave, right, leave the company, or if they pass away, or they're just no longer with you guys, right? That financial burden, that company doesn't suffer financially to cover that the cost median to replace that person. Like most people have restaurants and stuff like that, right? What if the chef leaves? Right? Who's gonna cook the food? Now the business is gonna crumble. How can we protect you until you get able to go find a chef or find whatever you need to be? I just use that as an example, right? Key person insurance, but also how most employers have employees that don't provide benefits because they don't know what it's going to cost. What if I tell you there's a good way to recruit, retain, and reward your employees with a non out of cost budget for you, right? These are just certain things that a lot of business owners aren't aware of that they can do and provide without coming out the pocket necessarily, but also increasing their income when it's time for them to hang it up, right? They're always so focused on the business, growing their employees, keeping their staff, retention, all these different things that goes into running the business, and they forget the most important part, them, the business owner, right? And now they're trying to struggle fi- figuring it out oh, I'm retiring 5 years from now. I'm trying to get out the business. I've been doing this for so long. Or other words, your business has been so successful, you got bought out. Now you're in a place where I have all this money, I have all these things. I don't know what to do. I'm just paying taxes on it, and I don't know what to do. How can I help you take, some of that money out of the tax system and diversifying your portfolio, whatever that is, right? Your pie is your retirement. Your toppings is how much you want. What slices are coming from which buckets? Your three buckets of money. You have your tax free, you tax deferred, you tax never. It's a little bit different for a business owner because most of the time there's no tax deferred, right? It's either tax now or tax never. So how can I help you get more into that money into that tax never bucket while still appeasing to your business and growing your wealth.
Wow, I like, well, all of that. I've just heard about a couple of them that you had mentioned, and I would definitely love to have further conversation with you about some of them because I work with a lot of business owners, and that whole idea of having a business owner that's outside of themselves or someone who's a key person in their business. A lot of them don't think about making sure that they're insured so that they can find a replacement or be able to pay bills until that replacement comes back, or a replacement is found to fill that gap or that hole. So that is really really big, and a great thing to talk about and to be focused on. I don't know if this is new, but I'm like, I've never even heard of that. So I'm like, that is grand. I'm glad that you're sharing that. So we're coming down to the end. Our time is already almost over. Like, I feel like it just got started. And so one of the questions I wanted to hear from you is, what are the key habits or mindsets that financially successful individuals tend to adopt early on? Especially since we were talking about kids and getting into the mindsets and trying to raise them up in the space. So what are the key habits or mindsets for financially sound child, or that they should adopt?
So one thing I should say is stop starting as early as possible. Right. That's the big thing. The younger you are, the more time and run rate that you have. Um, Starting early. That's what most every successful person really told you. Um, I started when I was 18. I started when I was this. I was starting with that. Those who work their way up, I like to say, not the ones who were, some people are generously gifted, but those who work their way up, you hear them. They started early, right? Not only that, as you said earlier, they're very frugal, right? Now, frugal doesn't mean you have to limit yourself. But I like to say, instead of working in whole numbers, people like to say, "Oh, I'm going to save $500 from this check, each check." Work in percentages, because your check may be $1,000 this week, but it may be 800 this week with taxes and everything. But you're still going to take that 500. Now you're putting yourself at a disadvantage. Like, I can't take that 500 right now, and you're messing up your flow, and it falls into a system. And then you realize it's like, oh, I done got four checks. I said I'm gonna save $500 from each check, and I only got 250 in my savings. You know what I mean? So I like to say work in percentages, right? Figure out what percentages work for you, and then apply that to everything, right? Say 40% of my income is gonna be directly towards bills, right? 25% is directly towards food and leisure, right? Another 30% is towards entertainment, right? Divvy it up, right? Divide your pie is going to make it easier for you, right? Finances are very easy, but it can get very tricky, right? So once you're doing it like that, it's easier for you to see the bigger picture, and then it allows you to save more. We're natural human beings. Once we start seeing ourselves to do something by nature, it pushes us to, oh, I'm doing it. I'm doing it. We all know when we first saved that first $1,000, and it's like, oh, I really saved that $1,000. Let me save another thousand, right? And that's the idea of the, I like to say, adapting a growth mindset, right? That's another way how not other habits that financially successful people are doing. Not only that, they're talking to people who are smarter than them, I like to say, or people who are more educated, who are more literate than them in that field, and not being shameful, right? They're seeking the knowledge, right? They're going out and talking to these people. They're talking to people like myself. They're going to webinars. Now is a big thing on TikTok. Everyone is talking about, trust and the waterfall method with the Rockefellers and what the Rockefellers did, right? That's a big thing, educating yourself, right? Seeing what others did, right? We're able to do the same thing that these people did. It might not be at that scale, that level, right? But focus on your means, right? And then maybe who knows, right? You may get to that point because even though I like to say tomorrow isn't guaranteed, let's focus on, let's say if you were guaranteed tomorrow, you would live life differently than what you are living now. Or if you knew when you were going to die, right? You would operate and move in a more timely manner. So I like to say we don't know when we are, so why not move in a timely manner every single time that we can, and then we have that opportunity too, right? So that's how, from my experience of dealing with people who are financially savvy, that's what they're doing, Right? They're listening to the others and seeing what they're doing, and they're not trying to reinvent the system. They're just focusing on how can I apply that system to where I'm at. So that's another mindset and habits that my clients are doing in terms of who the ones who are very, very financially stable. But they weren't always there. They grew. They allowed themselves to grow. Please, people, be patient with yourself. You know, you're not going to turn a millionaire overnight, right? It takes time. Sometimes, you mean, especially in our community, we have a hard time if we can't see, touch, or feel, right? It doesn't feel like you're doing anything, right? It doesn't, oh, I can't see it, I can't touch it, I can't have it now. Why am I doing this? It's not having that mindset. Like I said, the person who planted the apple tree may not get the fruit. They may not, right? It's having that mindset, right? And that's going to create that waterfall that you want to make. Another thing that a lot of people are they're simply just going out and not being scared. They're opening, they're ripping off the band-aids, they're going through what they have, they're always on top of it. They're updating it every what 2, 3, 4 years. They're constantly updating to see because again, we get different administrations, we get different, interest rates, we get different all these different things that are variants, and people are going in and saying, hey, how does this affect me? And they're working with a professional. That's one thing that every last one of them are doing. They're working with someone who's a professional in this business, who is there to educate them, right? Obviously, they do their own research, but they're working with companies like the one I represent, who are the number one rated company in the United States, right? They're working with these financial firms and working with different advisors and professionals from all over the industry to help grow. Because again, you can't do it by yourself, but why break and fight the system when someone like me who's put in that time and effort to go educate themselves to help educate you?
Absolutely. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah, you talked about this delayed gratification. Like that is a really big one where people are want everything right now, fast money right now. How can I get it? How can I spend it? I'm not trying to sit what they say. I'm not trying to work hard so that my kids could benefit from the fruits of my labor. Right. I'm sure it's something that you heard and you keep talking about the fruit tree is like I did all this work to plant this tree and now my kids and my grandkids are the ones that are going to reap the benefits. And it's like, but wouldn't you want to be exalted in that way? Wouldn't you want to be loved in that way, to be like my mom or my dad or grandmother or grandfather or great grandmother, great grandfather, they sacrificed so that I could have now. So that delayed gratification is really big. And then you said that taking risks, like so many people are risk adverse, but they're risk adverse. Some things they get in the car drunk and drive, but they won't. They won't get, they won't bet. They'll bet $1, but they won't bet $50 on savings and something that's a higher percentage of a return on investment for themselves. Again, because it involves their delayed gratification. It's not right now, right here, kind of thing. So I really appreciate you sharing that, and like you also said, working with a professional as well, I think is a very big piece of the pie as well, because a lot of us don't think about that. And I was just sharing with a customer that I had earlier on this week, that we as professionals, even if we are experts in it, we can't operate on ourselves. A doctor cannot do brain surgery on himself. A doctor can't open his head up and go in like it just doesn't work that way. We have to allow other people to come in and mentor us, be a mentor to us in different spaces, or coach. Whatever terminology we use or you feel comfortable with, mentor, coach, utilize it and be in that framework. So thank you so much for sharing that. And lastly, my last question before we head off, is what does Juneteenth mean to you?
And I love this question because me and you had a conversation about what Juneteenth was. Um, what does Juneteenth mean to me? So I'm not going to say, oh, I knew what Juneteenth was and everything. No, I wasn't one of those people. I honestly didn't know what Juneteenth was until 2020. Right? I lied, 2018 when I actually came to your um block party that you had. I believe it was 2018. That was the first one, but I still didn't know what Juneteenth was really until 2020. I knew what the term was, but I didn't know what Juneteenth was. what does Juneteenth mean to me? Juneteenth means to me is it means empowerment. Right. Obviously, the history behind it, that was the day where those last few slaves in Texas found out that, we've been free for years, right? That we were fully emancipated. And it took years for them to figure it out. But what it means to me now, it just means power and impact, right? We are such a large community, right? And we don't operate as a community. And I feel like Juneteenth is that one day we all come together, right? Or we should come together, right? From all different walks of the life of the African American descent, whether you're Caribbean, whether you're African, whether you're African American, right? We're all in this fight together. So, and how can we translate it to not only have it on that day, and every day should be a Juneteenth day? You know what I mean? That's what Juneteenth means. It means to rise and be powerful, right? Impactful together, change. That's what Juneteenth means to me. And it starts here, like communities and organizations like you, people like you are putting on these events multiple times throughout the year, not only on just on Juneteenth, because again, I feel like Juneteenth is every day. You know, in order for us to really get the change and the impact that we want for our people, we have to believe and have that same energy we have around that Juneteenth day every single day of the year. You know, the same energy we have during Black History Month. It's Black History Month every day, right? Because we're living in the community with our Black and African American family members and our brothers and sisters. Right? Every day should be a Juneteenth day. So that's what Juneteenth means to me. It means together, means impactful, means power, means rise.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. The power, impact, all of those things. So, Chad, thank you for pouring into us on today with your wisdom, with your warmth, with your ideology around rise and helping us understand what that is. You are a true example of what it means to thrive in purpose and in wellness. So, thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to having you back. And welcome aboard to the board for sure.
Thank you so much. And I can't wait to get hands on, get into the community, whatever it takes. Yeah, I want to see my people grow. Thank you for
Absolutely. Well,
having me.
thank you. You're very welcome. I'm going to put you backstage while I close this out on today. So, as we close today's powerful session, one truth rises above all, and that's planning is power. Chad Chambers has reminded us that financial security isn't reserved for the elite. It's not for the elite. It is for everyone, for the families, for business owners, for every individual who has the right to and wants to pursue it. With guidance, which we talked about, mentorship, or having a coach, with intentionality, planning, preparation, and with the right strategy. We can use the rise that Chad shared, reach for our goals, inspire those around us, secure our futures, and empower generations to come. Whether you're starting small, recovering from setbacks, which I know a lot of us are going into that space right now, or aiming for higher than you've ever reached before. It's something every family, every business owner, and every individual has the right to pursue with guidance, intention, and the right strategy. Today marks your opportunity to move with clarity and confidence. So, because when we plan with purpose, we don't just protect what we have, we build and we dream. As a family, as a community, we build together. So, thank you, Chad. I appreciate you for sharing your wisdom and walking us through the path to financial freedom with compassion and clarity. This is how we rise, and that is together. Have a blessed one, everyone, and we'll see you next week, Thursday, for our next Lunch and Learn. My name is Athenia Rodney, CEO and founder of Juneteenth NYC, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
So with the brand new album, and I'm talking hits of the
Juneteenth Festival was a full This Culture Alive donate today. Please like, share, and comment. Register now at juneteenth.ny.com. Thanks for watching. share, and comment. Register now at junteen.ny.com. Thanks for watching.